Earth Mother, please send me your wind. Send me your wind, send me your wind, send me your wind.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Wilderness Torah's Shmita Slowdown series. Thank you for joining us. In this series, we are exploring the power of Shmita through live conversations with change makers across the Jewish world. Just for some context, Shmita, which means release, letting go in Hebrew, is the last year of a 7-year cycle when the Jewish people are instructed to release the land, dead, and those in servitude. Today, this is a cultural opportunity to rest, renew, and transform. At Wilderness Torah, we are using this Shmita year to take stock, clarify our purpose, and plan for building the Center for Earth-Based Judaism. We are thrilled to host the Shmita Slowdown series as a way to share diverse voices and perspectives. My name is Itamar Cohn. I am the Youth Programs Education Director at Wilderness Torah, and I'm very happy to welcome today our featured guest, Daniel Schindelman Schoen, and who was the previous Youth Programs Director. So this is a beautiful meeting again. DanDan is in Argentina. And DanDan, would you introduce yourself for us, please?
Yeah, I was the Youth Programs Director as opposed to the Youth Programs Education Director. So there's been I don't know what that says about me or what this says about Itamar, but something changed in the space between roles. But it's good to be here. Nice to see you, Itamar, and to be talking about Shmita. It's true that my name is Daniel Schindelman Schoen. I also do go by DanDan, and I am here in the Southern Hemisphere in Argentina, in Cordoba, Argentina, which is the center of the country, it's like the second city. So like everybody, you say you're going to Argentina, everybody's like, oh, Buenos Aires. And then you're like, it's actually, there's more, there is more. And so that's where we are in the more. I don't know, do you want me to say more by way of introduction, or do you want to just get into it?
Well, since we don't have a long time and you and I can talk for a long time about this kind of thing, I thought maybe we can get right into it. What do you think?
Great, that's it.
So we have a short list of questions that we are invited to converse about. And the first one is, what does Shmita mean to you? Or what does it mean to us? And wondering if you have some thoughts about that.
Yes, I do have some thoughts about that. I was thinking about the arc of Shmita for me. At the beginning, if I had to have like an image, like there's been a few images for me. Shmita image 1 was at Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah in September with Wilderness Torah and at Camp Newman, and me like that being my departure from my job. And that was like a real, I'm worrying that we froze. No, you're just so.
I'm just listening.
I love that. So it was me leaving my job. That was like, it was like the release of the job that I had been working for 3 years, and it was also leaving my home in Oakland and setting off on like a new thing. So it was like, there was like a real tangible leaving that was happening. Sorry, I got to turn off my flashlight here. And then, so that was exciting. Shmita meant quitting my job and moving to Argentina. And then Shmita meant to me like vacation. Like that was what Shmita meant for me. It was like, oh, I have all this time and I can go to the river and cook a lot of food and spend a lot of time with my little toddler son. And so that was like the Shmita image number 2 was vacation. And recently, Shmita image number 3 is me like waking up with a lot of anxiety actually about like what I'm doing in my life. And it's like all these things that perhaps have been under the surface for some time, maybe even for years, are surfacing, and it's pretty uncomfortable. So that's Shmita image number 3, is me waking up with like a frown on my face and feeling kind of stressed and pensive and anxious. So that's where we've gone. We've gone from quitting the job, vacation, to anxious.
Do you mind if I add another image? It's an image from your life that I was a witness to. There was the moment where, you know, you were going to get on the flight.
Right.
And then flights were getting canceled to go to Argentina.
Right.
And it was this moment of shifting from like what you had planned it would look like to what it is actually looking like. And I actually reflected on that because the word Shmita in Hebrew has this association of when you unwillingly drop something. Right. So we retranslate it to English as release or letting go, which brings this association of something that we're still in control of. We are choosing to let go. We are choosing to release. And Shmita actually has this association of like when I'm dropping something that I didn't mean to, like I'm losing my grip and it's falling.
Right.
And it made me think of that situation with you in that flight of just like, sure, there's the way that we plan to have Shmita, and then there's the way that it happens out of control.
Right. Yeah, I love that moment. And thanks for reminding me, because I think that was like the closest that I have felt, or one of the moments where I felt really close to like, oh yeah, this isn't me doing Shmita, this is Shmita doing me. The other moment I'll just share, the other image for that is I'm trying to grow corn here, and there's all these beetles eating the corn. And I feel like that is also like Shmita doing me, partly because I'm not, we can get into like gardening stuff in a little bit, but it's just like, I'm just like letting it happen to me. It's taking the corn. And when I see those corn leaves chewed up by the beetles, and I see their poop everywhere, and I see the places where the corn would have grown, I think to myself, that is Shmita.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and like that already kind of leads us into the second question that we have on here, which was like, how do you embrace Shmita as an individual, which you're already talking about, and but it also, and it says, and also in your community. And so I'm curious, like, you know, you've gone out there to Argentina, and you're embracing Shmita in your way. And I'm curious, how do you see that in a community setting, rather than just as an individual practice?
Nice. You'll hear and see some of my community behind me around here. These are my in-laws, my suegros, my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So this is their home that I'm in right now. So you know, I saw that question. I don't know if that was your question or if that was like if that's just like a standard question for this. And when I saw that question, I was like, community? You know, like I feel pretty distant from community. I'm on WhatsApp. I'm like staying connected digitally, and I'm a part of my extended family through my wife Mare here in Argentina. But it's not. I mean, I'm curious what you when you use the word community, what you're thinking about when you say that, Itamar.
I mean, that's a great question. I would maybe say like the sum of relationships that you would include in how you define yourself would be your community.
Nice. The sum of relationships of how I define myself. And so yeah, like, I mean, like I'm aware of Shmita. I feel like I have some ideas, some maybe fantasies about Shmita as like a societal practice of like a whole group of people shifting their relationship to land and each other And so through Shmita. And I don't feel like that's what's happening in my life. I feel like mostly the world is just like continuing. And one thing that comes to mind is that in my relationships, I just have like time for a different way of relating in my relations. So if my community is like my human community, you know, my friends and family, I have time to like think about those relationships in a different way because of how I'm practicing Shmita, because I'm not working a job. I have this like time, which can open up certain different ways of relating in relationship. It makes me think of like how am I really practicing Shmita, which maybe we want to get to. And maybe that's where we want to take the conversation. Like, how do we practice Shmita? But if there's something else like about the community aspect of Shmita, then I would be happy to go into it.
Yeah, I think that one way for you and I specifically to go into it is, given that both of us have been working with youth for a long time and leading youth in kind of building community, and I think it's like an aspect that probably hasn't been touched on by the other Shmita episodes is practicing Shmita relevant to youth and youth work, and if so, how? Like, and I think that bringing the youth in is also like widening our, like, okay, so community, it's got all different ages and different life stages, and I think it's interesting to know that Wilderness Torah is taking this year of Shmita for the community programs, but the youth programs are continuing as they were. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, which I'm not sure what more I can say about it right now, right? Other than it's interesting. I think it maybe was more just the way it happened,
Right.
But yeah, I'm curious, like, do you have, like, from your, I see you with the step that you made in your personal life to really take and honor Shmita, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts about this, looking back at your time as the youth programs director, and how is this, working for youth, or how is it relevant?
Right. Yeah, I love that question, and I would love to explore. I'd love to hear from you as well, what that brings up for you. But I'll throw something on the table and see where it goes.
Thank you.
So I'm reading a book. I got to reference a book. It's like the Deep Ecology Manifesto, Dolores LaChapelle, and she's talking about the Huichol indigenous people in Mexico, and how one of the practices is to like include the children in a story that they are going to be a part of. And for them, it's like a pilgrimage story. So they tell the children as they are young the story of a pilgrimage to a sacred mountain and to different sacred sites. And the children hear the story for many years before they are ever invited to go on it. And then when they do finally get to go on this pilgrimage, I guess one of the ideas is like that they feel themselves to be part of a story that is bigger than their life, and that's a really important, just human. It's like a universal human need, is to feel yourself to be part of a story. And so I was thinking about what we do as Jewish educators and Jewish program providers for youth, and how we do a lot of like placing youth into a story that comes before them. We tell a lot of Torah, we talk about the Maccabees, we talk about the rabbinical movement, we talk about Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews and Mizrahi Jews and the story of the Jewish people. And we kind of help. I feel like that's one of the things that I was doing, is like helping youth, kids, young people to connect to their ancestors or to this ancestral tradition that they are somehow a part of. And that's beautiful. I love that. But when I think of like what is the story that we are inviting children into? What is the story that we are telling them that they are going to live into? You have the kind of like the secular story, which is like you're going to get an education, you're going to get a job, you're going to get married and have children, and hopefully it all works out. Fingers crossed. That's like the secular story that we may not be explicitly inviting them into, but we're implicitly kind of participating in. And then Jewishly, I think we're inviting kids into a story of like the holidays throughout the year. Maybe we're inviting them into a story of like a bar, bat, b'nai mitzvah. And if we're really religious, if we're feeling stoked on some more religious traditions, maybe we're inviting kids into a story having to do with the Messiah, and like that's coming, and that's something you're going to live into. But that wasn't part of my gig. I wasn't doing a lot of messianic stuff. So when I think about Shmita, I think about, whoa, like this is actually a story that I wonder how we could invite youth into the story of Shmita. I wonder how we tell kids about what Shmita is, because it kind of has a mythological feeling to it, right? It's like there's a 7-year cycle, and on the 7th year, we change everything. And like, this is how it works. And this was the last one. And this is what happened on the last one. And this is the next one. And if you wait 42 more years, you're going to get to the Jubilee year, and then it's going to really go off. And so it's a way of inviting children into a story that they might be able to see themselves living into, that for me is subversive to some of the like secular story, the kind of like, just get a job and have kids and you're going to be good. It kind of gets at something a little deeper, which I like. And it's not too directive. Shmita, if I was to tell a kid, and there's a 7-year cycle, and every 7 years we're going to make time for renewal. That gives a lot of space for that to mean something different for each person, for each kid who grows into an adult and who practices Shmita, if they do. So it is directive in certain aspects, the 7 years and other ways that we can understand directions from it, but it has a lot of space for some of the creative renewal that I think is needed in this time. So that's I guess that's a question, like, is Shmita is Shmita as a story, as a myth to look forward into, to place yourself into? Is that something that you could imagine benefiting a kid in one of Wilderness Torah's youth programs, or how do you see the story of Shmita playing a role in our youth programs?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you. I'm feeling like I'm latching on to this idea of like embedding in the bigger context, or embedding in a cyclical mythological context. And
right.
First of all, it's like embedding into anything that's cyclical is in a way like embedding into like an earth connection, right? Like this cyclical coming around. And so just like being in a culture that honors that, and not only honors the cyclicality of it, there's almost like a teaching in there about death as well, right? So there's a beginning and an end, and then it begins again. And so there's like deep lessons in there that are subversive to our culture, which in many ways is death phobic, accumulative, make the best out of whatever you're given, and like take as much as you can out of it, and like don't let go unless you really have to. And so there is something beautiful just about youth, just like growing up in a culture like that. Now, that, like you said, what you said made me think of something that Rabbi Zelig once told me about Tisha B'Av. We were at the grief ritual and saying about how like just like preserving that space for who might need it. Doesn't mean that everybody needs it, but that it's there. We know how to do it so that when somebody needs it, they have it. And so in a similar way, I'm not sure that the youth that we're working with need Shmita right now. Right. But they need it in their life. So they need it to be in place in a healthy way so that when they need it, it's there. And yeah, that kind of connects with like life stages. So if I think about the cycle of life stages, then maybe Shmita would be more associated with like, elderhood of like past, like, if I think of a tree, it grows, it strengthens, it bears fruit, and then it enters like the Shmita year. And so, like the children, the youth that we're working with are maybe just, the young ones are still growing, the older ones, the teens are just coming into like bearing fruit. So for them, it's probably not yet the time to like be in this like dropping it, that they're still coming into being.
Right.
But there is also like stages within that, so I think like my daughter is going to turn 7 very soon, and we're thinking about, wow, 7 feels meaningful, and I'm also watching her and being like, oh, and like recognizing that there is a shift that's happening, and that shift happens through like a dying or an ending of what was happening before and the beginning of something new. And
right.
So again, just like recognizing those cycles, and celebrating them, giving them space, and not just like this continuous, we're just on a linear path, onward and upward forever.
Right. Disrupt the linearity. And while you were speaking, I was also just imagining the children, like how important it is for them to see adults doing that. Like even if Shmita is just something you talk to kids about, if you're not saying, all right, kid, like it's Shmita year, drop high school, drop kindergarten, like let's go frolic in the river. If we're saying, all right, you're a kid, like these rules don't apply to you, perhaps, because you're in a different life stage, like you're talking about. But how important it could be for a child to witness someone go through it. Like I feel like I've been so inspired to like change my life for Shmita because of hearing stories of people that I knew that like actually did something different for Shmita. And I feel like as I tell people about Shmita in my day-to-day, like I see people's like minds, like I see them, like their wheels turn. Of course, they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I want to be a part of that next time it comes around. It's such a privilege to get to do it, but I feel like it's kind of the kind of privilege that we would really want for everybody. We really want to design for everybody to be able to access, like you're saying, like when they need it. So I love the idea of children getting to witness it. And it's interesting to think about you and the whole youth programs team. By nature, you're having to work to be with the youth, right? But so like, how can you do Shmita as a mentor and as a youth programs director? Like how are you, or how is Shmita like feel relevant to you in your work, if it does?
Right. And that kind of, in a way, almost points to something, is that, especially for young children, in a sense, they're kind of in Shmita, right? They're
right.
Like,
exactly.
They're in a way embodying that state of being. And so in some ways, we're trying to like initiate them, in a worst case, indoctrinate them into like a culture that like
out of
Shmita culture, and which is again why it's so important that we have that. It's a bit like Shabbat, like so Shmita, just like we remember that it's part of the cycle of 7, so it's part of Shabbat cycle, then Shmita cycle, then Jubilee cycle, and so I think it's a beautiful wisdom in our tradition that says, yes, work, yes, achieve things, yes, do things, and always reset, always leave that space. And so it's both Shabbat and Shmita and Jubilee. And so, yeah, I think that in considering that, it's really like we have it, it's in the program. Like there's the 50-50 principle, we plan things and then we know that about 50% of it is not going to happen. And we're just going to flow with what, the youth is leading us, curiosity is leading us, and like coincidence and is leading us too. And so I think that, in a way, Shmita would be to learn more. Like for us at the youth programs would be to like incorporate more of that youthful, innate wisdom in this year. Yeah. And you're already touching on something like I don't know, we don't have that much time if this goes by really quick, but let's maybe do so you were kind of like talking about like us having to hold it for the youth, right? Not taking our own kind of Shmita so that we can hold it for the youth. And it made me think of just being in a leadership position, like in general. And
Right.
you know, you are in a leadership position. You were formally before as a youth program director. I think you are informally in a leadership position now as people look up to you and see what you're doing, are, you know, inspired by it. And I'm curious, maybe in a short one, because we only have a few minutes left, but how do you see those two interacting, like the responsibility in a sense of leadership
Right.
and Shmita?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a deep one. I mean, I feel like for me, part of my Shmita experience has been at least an attempt to not be a leader, to drop some of the leader. Like, I don't even want to, like, we have friends visiting, like, I feel even resistant to like organizing like a group dinner, you know, like my moms were here visiting, and it's like planning. I found it to be so, I mean, I love my moms, love them, so glad they came. And it was so exhausting to feel that, that way that I play the leadership role. And I don't know, I guess, I don't know what that is about. Maybe it's something about, like, for me, part of my prayer for Shmita is like the thing that I've been doing for 6 years, like to like, just like give it a break, give it an out breath. And so like, I have been clear, like, I don't want to like work with children while I'm in Argentina. Like, I really want to like, just give that an out breath. And it's hard to do because I think people who are in leadership positions are generally in leadership positions because they have leadership qualities. It's like it's not just a position. It's not like an on-off. It's not just like you show up for your job and you're in leadership and then you leave and you turn it off. It's like you're in leadership because you have leadership. You've cultivated that in yourself. So I find myself in positions where my leadership is being asked for. And it's one of the questions that I have right now. Like, can I really step away from leadership, whatever leadership really means? I guess that would be a whole nother episode on Robbie's podcast here, is like, what is leadership? Which we won't get into right now, but that's where it takes me to, is like, because maybe there are different sides of leadership that I could be exploring in Shmita. Like, maybe like leadership has many faces, and so what is the face of leadership in Shmita is where that question takes me.
Yeah, you know, like obviously I have more experience with Shabbat than I have with Shmita, just because it happens more often. And you know, like, it makes me think of like, what is leadership on Shabbat? You know, like, what is, you know, when we host friends at home for Shabbat, and like, for me, Shabbat is about rest, right? I just want to rest, and something about like, in this moment, knowing Shabbat for me is about like, the world goes on without me, right?
Right.
It's a moment to stop and watch, be like, oh, everything's fine, nothing's falling apart because I'm not working, because I'm not active, and so and then balancing that with hosting people, and like, okay, I want them to have a good time, I want to make good food for them, I want to make, and maybe I want to lead the prayer or lead the blessing, so that the Shabbat spirit is there. And like, so that kind of like, when I think about leadership in Shmita, I'm thinking about, you know, extending it from what does it look like on Shabbat? How do we balance that?
I love that. Because it's like, how are we doing on time, by the way?
I think we have like maybe a minute.
Wow. Closing words.
Yeah, closing words. There it goes. There it goes. We can call it a teaser.
Well, maybe that's a question for us to all take, whoever of us, if it's just us, whoever wants to take that question of because I mean, right, the teaching is that we're all leaders. Like all of our leadership is needed. So what is the part of us that leads from that place that knows that maybe like we don't have to like activate so much, we don't have to like manifest in this like linear game plan but like that Shabbat leadership, that Shemitah leadership, maybe that part of us as individuals and as humans, as communities, is really being called for. And I'm gonna meditate on that one for sure, and we'll, at least me and you tomorrow, have another talk about that question.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna actually read the script, but this is true. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to everyone watching online, and really special thanks to you, DanDan. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the Shmita that you've taken, and I really look forward to all the insights that you will bring back to our community, and the wisdom, the shared collective wisdom about what is this beautiful tool that we were given to keep things in balance and be a healthy person and a healthy community.
Dear